let's transition here, Rebecca, and let's talk about the schedule. Last year, when it came to the schedule, I looked at it, and I think when you compare last year's schedule to this one, last year's was a bit more difficult in terms of strength of schedule and all of that. That concerned me. Obviously, losing Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and some other guys concerned me as well. I still kind of had the team as maybe a 9-7 wild card type of team in 2016. Obviously, they went 6-9-1 and experienced a lot of injuries and some poor performances. All of that good stuff that we all shook our heads at throughout the year. But this year's schedule seems a little easier. Now, I did, for Cincy Jungle, I did an early season, once the schedule came out, kind of did a prediction and went through the games and kind of did a little summary. And I believe what I put was, and I think mostly it was because they didn't do much in free agency in terms of additions or really even retaining some of their big guys. And so I think I had them at about an 8-9 win window again, with the increase in wins from last year being, maybe guys stay a bit healthier. Their stars stay healthier this year. Brandon LaFell is more comfortable in the offense, and obviously the draft at that point was coming up. Maybe they add some tools there. Before the draft, Rebecca, as you went through the schedule, what did you see in terms of wins and losses before the Bengals added those 11 guys in the draft?
I mean, I feel like I'm like the resident optimist here. I mean, Connor actually also very much fills that role, maybe even more so than I do. But I was pretty optimistic about, like, if you just take a look at the teams that they're playing against, I mean, the Ravens, I feel like, we can always get one, if not two. And then just like going through, I feel like there are a lot of things that played into the team's favor. So I felt like 9 wins was really possible even before the draft. And maybe that was like being a little too optimistic pre-draft, but now I feel like that has been somewhat solidified, if not extended.
Okay. And yes, you are definitely more optimistic than I am, and kudos to you. I almost feel sorry. We have an internal little chat that we use for projects on Cincy Jungle and stuff. And when I'm not a popular guy on Sundays and Mondays when I talk in that chat room, because I'm a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction guy, and sometimes my Twitter lights up. And, I obviously get angry, and then 2 minutes later I'm like, oh, well, I just put my foot in my mouth, so oh well. But I was kind of with you in that 8-9 win range, but again, it was, you lost a couple of guys, you didn't do much in free agency, and then all of a sudden, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the Bengals add these guys, and there's almost this reinvigoration of not only the fan base but of the team. And you got guys like George Aloka on Twitter saying, these guys, even though it's on shorts, these guys can play. These rookies can play. They're fast, and that's what they wanted to bring. They wanted to get younger, faster, more athletic, and I think they definitely did that in the draft. So now we look at it. I guess we can kind of briefly go game by game, if that's okay with you, and talk about a little bit of maybe some of the games that concern you the most, all of that kind of stuff. The Bengals open at home against the Ravens, and it's the first time, gosh, in what was it, 3-4 years, I think, since they've had a home opener?
2009.
Yeah, so it's been a while. They open at home against the Ravens, and that's the team who they pre-Andy Dalton and into Andy Dalton's first couple of seasons, they kind of had a lot of back and forth, and even in Baltimore's good years, Lewis still kind of would sneak away with a win. But lately, it's really been a lot of the Bengals taking some good wins and sweeping a couple of season series. So how do you see this one playing out, the season opener at home against the Ravens?
I feel like the team is going to be super excited to come out week 1 and finally be at home. I mean, for some of the younger guys who have just joined the team, they don't realize that Andy Dalton and AJ Green have never played week 1 at home. So I feel like for them, they should be like super amped up, ready to go. The Bengals have done pretty well in week 1 for the last few years. I feel like they've won week 1 for at least the last 3 years in a row, maybe the last 4 years in a row. So I do feel like, week one they have in the bag, especially against the Ravens, who they've won, I think, 6 out of the last 7 games
Yeah.
against. And then also, the hype of week one being at home.
Yeah, and that's a crazy statement to think about, that Andy Dalton and AJ Green have never opened the season at home. That's just, I know they're not super long in the tooth, but they've been on the team for a while. That's crazy to think about. I tend to agree with you. The Bengals tend to play, even though it can get ugly at times. Sometimes it's a big shootout where it's crazy plays, the Hail Marys at the end, and I remember it was the 2015 season. I think it was week 2 or 3 that crazy game that went back and forth, and the Bengals pulled it off. I always write, expect the unexpected when the Bengals and Ravens play, because some weird stuff happens. But nevertheless, I tend to agree with you. I think that's a win for the team, and I do think that they pull it off. Now, this is where already week 2, we're already talking about some where the schedule gets really funky. 5 days later, they take on the Texans. They are at home, but they take on the Texans, a team that they have struggled mightily against. In basically since Andy Dalton's been there. I think he's got like a 1-5 record against them, or something of that nature. And it's coming off a short week against a division, the probably a hard-fought physical game against a division rival. Then you're going up against another great defense. Does this one concern you?
There are definite reasons to be concerned, but I feel like the beginning of the season is going to be the best time to play the Texans this year, because their quarterback situation is so uncertain. They're going to be starting out with a new quarterback. How is he going to do? Is the rookie going to play? So I feel like if there's a time to play the Texans, it's maybe, the beginning of the season coming off a short week. But then again, like last year, Carson Wentz, won the first 5 games in a row that he played, which was largely because, NFL teams just didn't know how to prepare for him as a new starter. So there's always throwing that kind of thing into the equation too. And the Bengals really have not done well against the Texans at all during Andy Dalton's time in Cincinnati. So there's definite reason to be concerned, but I still think that this has to be a win.
I'm pulled in 2 completely different directions here. And I totally agree with your statement on this is a great time to play him. Great time to play him because of the quarterback situation, and they'll be figuring stuff out. And usually, if I remember correctly, Houston's a team that really starts to build steam as the middle and end of the season comes around. And ironically, I think the only win Andy Dalton has had against the Texans was in Houston. I believe it was in 2014. So, that's kind of an odd one. I guess, oh boy, I don't know what to take on this one. I'll say a loss. So I got him at 1-1. You got him at 2-0. Then, oh boy, then they go to, a week and a half later, they go to Green Bay and play the Packers. And, this one's interesting. I actually might. There's a chance I might actually attend this game.
Me too. I'm gonna try really hard.
We got to link up if we got to link up if we do. That's my birthday, by the way, the 24th.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. So anyway, very interesting game, iconic field. The Bengals have actually done relatively well against Aaron Rodgers when he's been the quarterback. I believe they got a win against him in, I think it was 2009, and then again in
2014.
Yeah. And that one was a wacky one at Paul Brown Stadium. So this one is in Green Bay. Now, Green Bay is very similar to the Bengals in the fact that they don't really do a ton in free agency. They build through the draft. Some people haven't really dug totally what they've done this offseason, but again, Aaron Rodgers, home field. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I think one of the only major things that I can think of that the Bengals have in their corner here, not only their history against Aaron Rodgers and beating him, but the fact that they've got that kind of mini bye off of the Thursday night game. What do you think of this one?
I am going to say that this is a loss, but I do think that playing in Green Bay in September is ideal if you're going to play in Green Bay. less cold than it could be, which is why I'm interested in going. And also, someone asked in the comments earlier what the best road games are going to be this year. And even though I'm going to say that I predict this to be a loss, I do think that this is going to be the best road game because I've heard amazing things about going to games in Green Bay. I've heard like the fans are the most welcoming fans in the NFL, and that is just an amazing atmosphere. I really want to be there. And I mean, we can hope for a win, but I am going to say that this is going to be a loss as of now.
Yeah, I'm not saying, blowout or anything of that nature. Maybe this is a last minute field goal, but I do see it being a hard fought game, but and one that the Bengals could potentially win. But I don't know. That's just a tough call. You got to hope for a lot of things to fall your way and play. The Bengals will need to play pretty impeccable football in order to come out of there with a win. Not saying they can't, but the likelihood is probably favoring the Packers in that one. I get the feeling we'll probably agree at the next one. They're at Cleveland. Cleveland has either shown to be very scrappy against the Bengals or complete doormats. More so the latter in recent years, but I chalk this one up as them getting kind of right back on track and a good follow-up game to a very tough one against Green Bay. What do you think?
Yes, I'm going to agree. I think that the Browns have a chance to be better this year, and they have to be better this year than they were last year, but I think that it's going to take some time. So I think that, again, playing them earlier in the year is going to be less difficult than playing them later in the year.
Yeah. So you got them at 3-1, and I have them at 2-2 so far. Week later, they are home with the Bills, a team that every time I see that team on the Bengals schedule, I don't know about you, I'm just like, that team just bugs me because the Bengals either play really well, but somehow find a way to lose, or it's just one of those low scoring games. It's like 16-13 or, it's just one of those frustrating games that seems to, and they always seem to play them, even though they're not in the same division, which is weird. But what do you think about this one? But Buffalo goes to Paul Brown Stadium, October 8th, week 5.
I do not have high hopes for Buffalo this year. I just don't see it working out for them. I think they're not even going to get Macklin. He left there today after all their players tried to claim, oh, he's ours. He's already signed. We're signing players every day. Like, no, you're not. He's not coming to you. I think he actually is going to go to the Ravens, where he is right now. And I think that this should be a win. I think they also have a lot of quarterback questions. They have a new entire coaching staff and GMs and scouts. Like, literally the entire front office is turned over. Sounds like chaos there. I think the Bengals have this.
I tend to agree. I don't think it'll be the most fun game to watch is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I don't know. Every time they play the Bills, I just get frustrated with that game for some reason. But it's at home. The Bills have lost a couple of guys, as you have mentioned. They have added players, but in the midst of transition and all of that. So I think the Bengals get that there. You have them at 4-1. I have them at 3-2. And I hope I don't butcher this name in the YouTube chat. Amunkalakis has week 4 Browns. The Bengals go 4-0 and they beat them 34-18. And then week 5, he's got them 5-0, 28-17. So he's got them off to a pretty hot start there. Then the Bengals have the bye week, and there's not really much to talk about with a bye week, but I do want to ask you this. Are you favoring the fact that the bye week is earlier in the season? Do you wish it was later? Because after they've got a pretty decently tough stretch of games, and a bunch in a row, obviously. So, do you have any reservations about it being so early in the season?
I think it's okay. Week 6, it could be worse. It could be week 4, which it was a few years ago. But I'm more concerned about the bye week being before the Steelers because the Steelers are next. And the Bengals do not play well when coming off a bye. I think it's like an absurdly bad record that they've had for the last 6 years of coming off the bye. So I don't really mind the week 6 bye, but I mind the week 6 bye followed by week 7 Steelers.
Okay. And I love that you brought up the bye week thing because that You're playing right into my points, Rebecca. I love it. I love it. Marvin Lewis is I talked about my concerns with Marvin Lewis. He's not good off the bye, and then I gave the Bengals a loss against the Texans. Marvin Lewis is not good in prime time, whether you believe in that or not. Those are two areas where and two critical areas that a coach should be capable in, and Marvin Lewis has proved not to be so. And then after the bye, like you mentioned, it's not only do they play the Steelers, they go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. And ironically, I mean, the Bengals have fewer than double-digit wins against Pittsburgh in Marvin Lewis's now 15 years as head coach, which is staggering. I think they have 6 or 7 wins against him or something like that. But
and then 3 of them are in they've won 3 times in Pittsburgh, maybe 2. It's terrible. It's not going to be. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, I don't understand that one, but so. It's not terrible weather at this point. I mean, it's mid to late October. It's not terrible weather at this point in Pittsburgh. But one of the things that does play into effect anytime you play at Heinz Field is the kicking game because the field is usually torn up. Kickers always complain about that field. So two good defenses, a lot of explosive weapons also for both teams. Going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see if Joe Mixon is getting a lot of carries and a lot of comparisons of Joe Mixon actually go to Le'Veon Bell, which is also interesting. But I have this as an L. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean the probability just is not in the Bengals' favor to, say that they can win.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement there. Then they play the Colts in a very interesting game, and it's at home. The Colts tend to play better, obviously, in their dome at home, and they also are a streaky team. And anytime Andrew Luck is in there, he's kind of the comeback kid. He's got a lot of comeback wins in his career. The Bengals, whether it was Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck, have not really had great luck, I guess, for lack of better words, against the Colts. So this one's a coin flip one for me. What about you?
I do see this as a win. I feel like, the Colts are trying. Last season was not a good one for them. They're trying to get back to where they should be with Andrew Luck as their quarterback. But I think that at home, the Bengals can win this. And they're probably going to be in a bit of must-win mode, even though it's super early to say that. But after coming off the Steelers, if that's a loss, I feel like they're really going to be pumped up to win. And I do feel like that's a winnable game for them.
Yeah, and it's a stretch of games where, your first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of your first 12 games are against AFC opponents, which, obviously the Bengals are going to play more AFC opponents anyway. But, when you're, like you said, with so many AFC opponents in how that playoff picture plays out, they're going to need to make some waves there. I'll give them a win here. I'm not totally definitive on that, but I think home field, they'll probably play a little angry after the Steelers game and may take it out on Indianapolis. So you have them at 4-2.
Is it
5-2?
Yeah, 5-2.
5-2, and I think I have them at 4-3.
Yeah.
Next one at Jacksonville. This team's kind of a mess. I tend to think this one's, even though it's in Jacksonville, I tend to think it should be a game that the Bengals walk away with probably a double-digit point win. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I do think that the Jaguars are going to improve this year. I feel like everyone says that every year, but they should improve this year, and their running game will be pretty scary. But I think that this should be another win for the Bengals. It really needs to be.
Yeah, I agree.
As one of the easier games.
This one scares me a little bit. This next one. They play the Titans in Tennessee, so they're back to back playing AFC South teams on their home turf, and the Titans I believe went 9-7 last year and were pushing for the playoffs. They showed some good strides. Marcus Mariota played very good football.
Yeah.
Bengals tend to struggle a little bit with those mobile quarterbacks, guys who run the read option, guys who can move around a little bit, who can ad lib and throw the ball downfield, which Mariota and the Titans can do. They've got the two-headed running attack of Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray. I think this might be a loss for them. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that the Titans are going to be very good this year. I think that this is definitely going to be a tough game. And this is also another game that I am interested in going to. I think that Tennessee,
Really?
Yeah, I think that it would be really fun to go, but not so much if it's a loss. But I am interested in going to this one too. But I don't have too high of hopes for their outcome.
Man, nothing would be worse than going to two Bengals games on the road and they lose both. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. I think that's going to be a tough one. And if you do go to that game, I hear Nashville is a very fun city, so have some fun if you do go there. And then this is kind of even though the Jaguars are maybe a weaker team, Titans, could very well be a playoff team or could regress a little bit. And then they play the Broncos. There's 3 road games in a row right there, which is very tough. This one's a little later in the day. It's not a primetime game. It might be on kind of quote unquote national TV, but they're at Denver, a team that they haven't always played great against, but they have won some big games against Denver in the past. Denver has a lot of talent at a lot of different spots, but they are another team that is still trying to figure out quarterback. If Trevor Siemian's the guy, Trevor Siemian tore the Bengals up last year, but in a game I was at, yay. But he really struggled down the stretch, and he didn't put up a ton of stats. That was obviously his biggest game of the season, and I don't think Denver even really knows what to make of their quarterback position at this point. I mean, I think they're probably committed to him at the moment, but who knows when, if they will be when Week 11 rolls around. I actually think they might take this one. What about you?
Yeah, I am with you, especially with a first-year head coach, even though that head coach is Vance Joseph, who was with the Bengals just 2 years ago as their secondary coach. So he obviously knows the team very well. But the Bengals are actually at a point now where they're playing their former coaches so often that they are getting used to how to deal with that. So I know last year they ended up having to change some hand signals because they were playing Hugh Jackson and then who was the other one that they and Jay Gruden in back-to-back weeks. And so this year we're going to get there, but they're also playing the Vikings. So that's going to be another 2 former coaches who they're going to have to figure out how to maneuver around and not, have it so obvious what they're doing. But I do see this as a win.
That's a great point. And I think a lot of people, especially last season when the Bengals struggled, a lot of people were fans were at least talking about Vance Joseph as being a guy, maybe we should bring him back as a possible head coach replacement, all of that. Obviously he's been a hot name for the past couple of years. He was a secondary coach with the Bengals, went to defensive coordinator with Miami, and then got promoted to head coach of Denver. And a lot of people think that's a good hire. I just think they still just might have some offensive growing pains just because of the quarterback position. Then the Bengals host the Browns. I think this is a win, but I'm gonna say this. I do think the Browns are heading in the right direction. I think they still need to figure out, obviously, the quarterback position. Maybe we'll see Deshaun Kaiser at this point. At this point in the season, if they're still trying to figure things out, but and they're losing a lot of games. But I do like the talent they've amassed, and I've said to people that I don't think this year will be a great one. They may be a 5-6 win team or something like that, but I think they'll be really scrappy in 2018, especially if they start figuring out the quarterback position. I still think the Bengals sweep the Browns, but we've thought that the Bengals would beat certain teams before, and they've kind of laid an egg. Do you see them sweeping this series this year again?
I do, but like I said before, I think the time to play them easy is going to be the beginning of the year. So I do expect that this game, even though this one is the one at home, is going to be the much tougher and more competitive contest, which actually kind of would be refreshing to see at this point. I mean, it's like I almost wonder, like, should we be rooting for them to have like some semblance of success just to make it more competitive? So I mean, no, but like I would enjoy it, being a real game instead of just like a blowout, which it has often been. So I do think they're going to win, but I think it'll be more fun to watch than some of the last few Bengals-Browns games.
Yeah, never forget that 2014 game when the Browns were really scrappy that year, and they came in and just really took it to the Bengals. Obviously, the Bengals were banged up at that point, but it was on Thursday Night Football, and that was a miserable game to watch. The one thing that's a little scary about that game is it's sandwiched not only between 3 away games, but it's also on the other side is a home game on primetime television against the Steelers. So, you'd like to think that the Bengals don't overlook the Browns, especially if they're struggling at that point, but kind of a little bit more tricky than people are giving them credit for. So I have them at this point, I believe, at 7-4, I believe I counted. So that puts you at 8-3, correct?
Yes, I believe that's right.
Okay. So this one
sounds like we're due for another loss.
This one is Bengals host the Steelers on Monday Night Football on ESPN. Could say a lot about the division. Could say a lot about the overall AFC playoff picture, especially if these hopes we have for the Bengals are truly coming to fruition this year. I want with all of my heart to say win here. I do. And the last time, I think one of the last times the Bengals hosted the Steelers on Monday Night Football, the Bengals won.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think it was 2014 maybe. Obviously other primetime games, they've absolutely imploded. But I want with all my heart to say win here. I don't know if I see it. What's your gut telling me here, Rebecca?
Yeah, I so desperately would love to say that I see this as a win, and I really hope that I'm proven wrong. I mean, I hope I'm proven wrong on every loss, but especially losses to the Steelers. But I just don't feel like we can really say that the Bengals can beat the Steelers as of now, especially in prime time. I mean, maybe, like, who knows if Ben Roethlisberger can make it through the whole season. Like, he's been injured essentially every year for the last 3 years. So you never know if that happens. But as of today, with everyone healthy, I am going to say this is a loss.
Captain Milken injury, right? That guy. Oh, my gosh. I'm seeing, a lot of predictions for previous games. I'm really curious to see what the listeners think about this one. Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. I mean, the Steelers aren't unbeatable, but I think this is December is usually Pittsburgh's time, and especially if they are relatively healthy and are in the playoff picture. They just have that killer instinct, and unfortunately, the Bengals haven't always shown that under Marvin Lewis. And even if the Steelers are hovering around 500 at the time, and they have a shot at the playoffs, and they know that a big win against the Bengals would help propel them to do that, they're going to play them tough. And unfortunately, a lot of Steelers fans will be in attendance at Paul Brown Stadium because they are fair weather fan base travelers. That's what they are. So, okay. So you have 8-4. Was it 8-4? And I have 7-5, I think, after that one.
Yeah.
Then it could be Mitchell Trubisky time. The Bengals host the Bears. I think they absolutely throttle Chicago. I think Chicago is kind of a mess. Maybe a little better than they were last year, but still not a good team in my opinion. I think this should be a win. What about you?
I am in total agreement. This has to be a win. It's going to get more tough again as we get down from here. It's going to be coming from a tough stretch. So yes, this needs to be a win. I think the Bears are still in chaos, and maybe I'm not even confident they'll be better this year than they were last year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could be right. Oh man. Yeah, that team, that's kind of a mess of a situation. As you mentioned earlier, very interesting one in week 15. The Minnesota Vikings host the Bengals, and Mike Zimmer hosts his old buddy, Marvin Lewis. I think they faced off in preseason last year. Vikings are, and again, another one of those teams that has a lot of talent in a lot of places. Unfortunately, their quarterback situation is a little bit in flux, and I say unfortunately because of what happened to Teddy Bridgewater, and he seems like a really stand-up guy, and I don't wish that kind of thing to happen. That big injury that happened last training camp on anybody, especially a good guy like him. But I don't know that he's going to be ready to play immediately. Some people think he might not even play this year. So it's going to be interesting to see if it's him or Sam Bradford under center. This should be a brawl. Another coin flip one for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a really tough one. I also am in agreement about Teddy Bridgewater. I really like him. What happened last year was terrible. And I did see that. I think he's been cleared to run left to right. So he's making some progress, but I don't know that he's going to be playing this year. So we'll see on that. And if he's not, then Sam Bradford kind of fell apart in the end of last year after they started the season 8-0. But I do think that the Vikings are going to be very good this year, and this game will be very tough. I think I'm going to say that this is a loss.
Okay. I'll take a win on this one, believe it or not. And I guess I'm seeing Sam Bradford kind of do the dink and dunk thing, and the Bengals players that they have in the secondary in the middle of the defense really taking advantage, maybe jumping routes, that sort of thing. They added, I believe they added Latavius Murray, the running back of Oakland, who that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that transition takes place from Adrian Peterson. But I don't know. I see that dink and dunk offense not really working well against that aggressive Bengals defense. I think they'll make some plays, and at this point, as we talked about earlier in the show, at this point we'll probably also get the Bengals offensive line. We'll get a good picture as to how they are at this point in the season and how they're doing, how those young guys are doing, because the Vikings can get after the passer, as can the Steelers and other teams on the schedule. But at this point, we should have a pretty good grasp on how that offensive line is looking. Another interesting one, the Bengals host the Lions, a team. Did they make the playoffs last year or just miss?
Yeah. They made it and then lost in the first round.
That's right. First round, yeah. Again, a team with a lot of talent and familiar face, Marvin Jones, a fan favorite, is now with Detroit. I tend to think the Lions can't really seem to keep, in terms of season to season, can't seem to keep any semblance of consistency, and that's really ironic coming from a guy who talks about the Bengals. But I just, I don't see them being a team that, consistently is in the playoff picture 3-4 years straight. I think they might go maybe 8-8-ish. So I think the Bengals might take this one, especially because it's at home. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Lions are definitely going to regress from last year. I don't see them staying as consistent as they were last year, but we will see, and I think that this should be a win.
Okay. And then the Bengals close out the season at Baltimore, as seems to be almost a yearly tradition, not necessarily in Baltimore, but they seem to play the Ravens, end the season with the Ravens almost every single year. Sometimes it's a meaningless game like last year where a lot of guys are injured and both teams are kind of out of the playoff race. Sometimes it's both teams that are going to the postseason. Sometimes it's one team that is kind of doing a gear-up game while going into the postseason. I don't personally see the Ravens as a playoff team this year. I guess given our records, I guess I see the Bengals looking as such, but I still think this is a loss, whether it's the Bengals resting guys or whether it's, Baltimore kind of just taking a home game away from the Bengals and another win from the Bengals. What do you think?
Well, two things. One is that if you just saw my face, it was because I was turning my head to the NBA Finals, where I think LeBron James just got a concussion and was down on the floor for like a very long time. So that was
breaking news on the Orange and Black Insider. I love it. Yes. I saw your face. I was like, do I got something on me? Breaking news. LeBron James has potentially an injury in the NBA Finals in Game 3.
So that was that. And then back to the actual, podcast here. I think that this is going to be a win because I really think that this could be the Bengals' make or break into the playoffs game. So I don't know what I have them at this point, but I assume that I'm pretty close to either like making the playoffs or not based on the outcome of this game. And I think that that's like what a lot of predictions have going right now is that the season really could come down to who wins this game, and maybe the person who wins it is in and the person who loses it is out. So I think that same thing, like playing well against the Ravens is necessary, but the Bengals have closed at home for like the last 6 seasons in a row for all those years that they opened on the road. So it'll be a change of scenery for them in the final week of the season.
So I believe, you had a win for this one, correct?
Yes, I'm giving them a win.
Okay, so I think if I'm counting correctly, I think you had them at 11-5. You had Ravens win, Texans win, Browns win, Bills win, Colts win, Jaguars win, Broncos win, Browns win, Bears win, Vikings you had
loss.
Lions win.
So 11-5, yeah.
Yeah, 11-5, and I think I had them at 10-6.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when we look at what you and I said at the beginning of this segment, we had them maybe around that 9-win range, and now we're looking at, based on a relooking at the schedule, we're looking at probably a 1 to 2 game positive difference for the Bengals because of the additions. Does that sound pretty fair to you?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that the Bengals are on paper better today than they were at the end of last season with all these rookie additions, though it really hinges on them actually playing the rookies. So like, I feel like every offseason we get so excited about these rookies and all the potential, and then they don't play. So I do think that this year really is going to be different in that the rookies largely are going to play. Like I think Mixon is going to be a heavy contributor. Ross is going to be a heavy contributor. And then the Jordan Willis and Carl Lawson both should be very heavily used in a rotation. Neither of them is going to start, in my opinion, but they are going to see the field. Right. And so I think that if these guys actually play, which they should, if their projections turn out accurate, then the Bengals really should be better this year than they were last year.
I agree, and I agree especially with those 4 rookies you mentioned. And we talked about Marvin Lewis and his contract earlier. Maybe that plays into it. Maybe he's kind of like, I'm going to push the chips to the center of the table, and these are exciting guys. We drafted them for a reason, and if he really wants to stay in Cincinnati and coach for another contract, he's going to have to play some of these young, talented guys. And hopefully that the potential and the upside matches the production if they do get the extensive time that we hope for. Good stuff, Rebecca. Appreciate your insight. What listeners, what do you think the Bengals are going to do in terms of record? Take a look at the schedule. Listen to what how we broke down the schedule and make your own predictions. I see a couple of people that have the Bengals in the YouTube chat winning quite a few games, maybe even more so than the 10-11 that Rebecca and I had for Cincinnati, which would be interesting if the Bengals can rebound that nicely and maybe even double their win total from the year prior. That would be a very nice welcome surprise. You can catch this show, as I mentioned earlier, you can catch this show on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. It's on Cincy Jungle, so check out all of the content there. You can get in touch with us via email, theobinsider@gmail.com. We're on Twitter @BengalsOBI. Rebecca is on Twitter at Rebecca_Toback. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, and I'm at CJ Anthony CY. So get in touch with us. Get in touch with the show. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown us so far.